let's talk about the Damian Lillard thing first, because I heard Mark Spears mention it, and I saw ESPN had Minnesota top 5 on their best fit. Do you think that is an avenue that there's like kind of like in Dumb and Dumber? Are you saying there's a chance?
I mean, there's always a chance. It's more of like, it's kind of like Katie. Does Lillard want to go to Minnesota? It's kind of like those things, like, because you saw Katie at the deadline was open to coming to Minnesota, but then recently when we were looking to trade for him, he didn't want to come to Minnesota. So there's always like that thing, like, does Dame want to come to Minnesota? Like, would he want to come to Minnesota compared to like, oh, I could just take the easy route, go to an LA team, live in the West Coast, like have better weather, go to a Texas, like. There's always that thing too, but I think as far as fit wise, like, you look at the point guard position, you look at the Wolves, and outside of Anthony Edwards, like, do they really have another just microwave scorer that, like, no, like, Jaden's not a microwave scorer. Randall was very good the second half of the regular season and the first two playoff series, being that other guy, but has Ant ever had like a Damian Lillard next to him? And the Wolves, they lack the point guard position right now. Conley's old. Dillingham's, no one knows quite how good he's going to be yet. So there's kind of that opening. And if they wanted to give it to Dame and say, hey, you probably won't be back till April, but like, if you want to come here, ramp up your process through the year, be able to be available for the playoffs. Like, I mean, you can't really say no to that. I mean, Dame's been in the playoffs. He's one of the best point guards in the NBA. Obviously, he's getting older now, but he's had these injuries. But it's Damian Lillard. He's been in the playoffs. He's won playoff series. He's been a clutch player before. Could Minnesota add that to the thing? I mean, you never say never. I do agree with Spears and ESPN. I think Minnesota's probably one of the better fits for him. You always talk about all these big market teams, but does he actually fit there? And I think, Minnesota's a good fit for Dame. For sure.
I would do some very sinful things to have Damian Lillard on this roster. I'll start with that first of all, because Damian Lillard, we can have like a giant debate over the CBA, but like the conversation that we're having right now with Dame and soon Beal and even Brogdon to an extent, the fact that players like this are getting cut and stretched their contracts and available for potentially $7 million to get under the second apron. Like, these are situations Minnesota has to jump all over, get rejected as many times as you have to, because we're just in a really weird time in NBA history where you can get a Hall of Famer for $7 million. And I get it. He wouldn't be available if it wasn't for an Achilles, but I don't think 5 years ago, this would even be a super possible scenario, but everybody's so darn afraid of the second apron. And I mean, Dame would be a veteran for Rob Dillingham. Damian Lillard would be the number 2 pretty reliably if he comes back healthy. And maybe it might have to be like a 2-year thing just so he has some ramp up and it's a 2-year window. But I just think Damian Lillard, that's a player like that is the solution if you're trying to outtake OKC, because suddenly their influx of perimeter defenders becomes less of a harm as it was last year for Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, the new CBA is it's very hard to understand the new CBA. There's a lot going on with it, and it's a hard topic to understand. And you see all these teams making all these moves and being on the second apron, and that's kind of where you got to give Tim Connelly like a big shout out too. Is like, I don't think people understand like how good he's done and how getting rid of that $53 million cat contract has really helped Minnesota, because in the extensions that he's done. And look, Naz Reid making $25 million a year is in 2 years is going to be like even better than it is now. And it already was a great contract. You could talk about not wanting to bring Randall back, but getting Randall back on 30, whatever he just signed for, $33 million a year. Gobert taking a pay cut to 35. Not only do you combine, like Naz Reid and Bruce Brown are combined for Cat's salary, you give yourself more room and flexibility with Anthony Edwards, which was the goal of trading Cat. You do that, And now you have guys that if you do need to make a move, if you do need to make a splash, these are way easier tradable contracts than a $55 million player. And that's why I think Tim Klein's done a great job, is because he's done that. But we also have, with these good contracts, all these young guys that are ready to play too. So it gives Minnesota so much flexibility with if they need to make a mid-trade during the year, they have all these young guys that can play. They have flexibility in the future for cap space with Anthony Edwards, and that's what you want if you want, because now they're under the second apron. So now they can package players for somebody if they need to, which was a problem in the second apron. You can't just like fill guys on and take back. So it gives them so much more room in the trade market, being able to, stack young guys. And that's another reason too with Behringer and Rocco, is that's why they drafted these two guys, and they didn't draft another pick, and they traded down because they wanted to stay on their second apron and give Rocco a second two-way contract. And they still have this, I think it's $5.5 million exception right before the apron that they can use right now. So we'll see how that works out and plays out. But look, if Dame's available for the minimum, like, sure, I'm not gonna dude, you gotta offer him, like, hey, you come to Minnesota, sure. You can't not offer him that. But I again, going back to just the point guard position, that's the biggest thing right now in Minnesota, is the point guard position, and maybe a backup center too. But like Mike Conley, he doesn't have it anymore. It's the sad truth. It's a hard truth. Love the guy, but you can't just have Rob Dillingham. You need to have a Brogdon at least at the bare minimum, or like a bridge starting QB. And there's not that many left. And I think if the Wolves, I know they've let the market play out because they've kind of had to, because they only really have a couple $1 million to give out. So they haven't really been able to jump on anybody. But, it's kind of getting to the point where, like, if you're going to go out and get somebody, like, you got to go get Brogdon. You got to maybe talk to Dame. I know I think they said he was open to signing with someone soon if the process, like the revamp process, was going to be okay with them, or else he can wait till later in the year. So